another runner in the night, blinded by the light. Wrapped up like a deuce, another runner in the night, blinded by the light. Wrapped up like a deuce, another runner in the night, blinded by the light. Wrapped up like a deuce, some silicone sister with a manager, mister, told me I got what it takes. She said I'll turn you on sun into something strong, play the song with the funky break. And go-kart Mozart was checking out the weather chart to see if it was safe outside. And little early birdie came by in his curly-whirly and asked me if I needed a ride. Wrapped up like a deuce, another runner in the night, blinded by the light. She got down, but she never got tight. She's gonna make it to the night. She's gonna make it through the night. From the east, says teeth from the dictaphone, hit it in its funny bone. That's where they expect it at least. It's the newborn chaperone was standing in the corner, watching the young girls dance. And some fresh soul moonstone was messing with his frozen zone, reminding him of romance. Another runner in the night, blinded by the light. Wrapped up like a deuce, another runner in the night, blinded by the light. Wrapped up like a deuce, another runner in the night. In the dark with the lumps as the adolescent pumps his way to his life. With a boulder on my shoulder, feeling kinda older, I track the merry-go-round. With his flurry of pleasing, sneezing and wheezing, a calliope crash. difficult touch is gonna make it through the night.
Tonight I'm gonna have myself a real good time. I feel alive, and the world I'm turning inside out. Yeah. I'm floating around in ecstasy. So don't stop me now. Stop me, 'cause I'm having a good time, having a good time. I'm a shooting star leaping through the sky like a tiger, defying the laws of gravity. I'm a racing car passing by like Lady Godiva. I'm gonna go, go, go. There's no stopping me. I'm burning through the sky, yeah. 200 degrees, that's why they call me Mr. Fahrenheit. I'm traveling at the speed of light. I wanna make a supersonic man out of you. Don't stop me now. I'm having such a good time. I'm having a ball. Don't stop me now. If you wanna have a good time, just give me a call. Don't stop me now. 'Cause I'm having a good time. Don't stop me now. Yes, I'm having a good time. I don't wanna stop at all. I'm a rocket ship on my way to Mars on a collision course. I am a satellite. I'm out of control. I'm a sex machine ready to reload. Like an atom bomb about to explode. I'm burning through the sky. Yeah. 200 degrees, that's why they call me Mr. Fahrenheit. I'm traveling at the speed of light. I wanna make a supersonic woman of you. Don't stop me, don't stop me, don't stop me. Hey, hey, hey! Don't stop me, don't stop me. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Don't stop me, don't stop me. Have a good time, good time. Don't stop me, don't stop me. Oh! Supersonic man out of you. Don't stop me now. I'm having such a good time. I'm having a ball. Don't stop me now. If you wanna have a good time, just give me a call. Don't stop me now. I'm having a good time. Don't stop me now. Yes, I'm having a good time. I don't wanna stop at all. Down the street with the brim pulled way down low. Ain't no sound but the sound of speed. Machine guns ready to go. Are you ready? Hey, are you ready for this? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? Out of the doorway, the bullets rip to the sound of the beat. Yeah. Another one bites the dust. Another one bites the dust. And another one gone. And another one gone. Another one bites the dust. Hey. Hey, I'm gonna get you too. Another one bites the dust. How do you think I'm gonna get along without you when you're gone? You took me for everything that I had and kicked me out of my own. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? one bites the dust. Ow! Another one bites the dust. Hey, hey! Another one bites the dust. Hey! Ooh, shout! There are plenty of ways that you can hurt a man and bring him to the ground. You can beat him, you can cheat him, you can treat him bad, or you leave him when he's down. Hey, but I'm ready, yes, I'm ready for you. I'm standing on my own two feet. I'm a dog with bullets free. Repeating the sound of big star. Yeah. Another one bites the dust. Another one bites the dust. And another one gone, and another one gone, another one bites the dust. Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna get you too. Another one bites the dust. Shoot out. All right.
I still see some people out in the bar getting a few drinks, so why don't you filter on in? So welcome everyone. Welcome to Louisville. I, for one, have been working for 2 years on how to say Louisville. So for those of you who don't know, you kind of have to swallow the back vowels. Do not learn from me at all, but from our guests here, from our residents. We're thrilled to have you here, and I was hoping that I could announce that it is yet another record-breaking Congress. We are just a few off. So I think Friday, when you'll see me on this stage again, I'll be able to tell you that yes, indeedy, for 2 years in a row, we'll have a record-breaking Congress. So thank you all for coming, and I want to especially thank our Louisville residents who have come out. We try to make our plenaries always free and open to the public, but particularly tonight is about Louisville. And so to have the residents to be here with us, supporting us, and learning with us, I think is just thrilling, so thank you. And mostly, I hope you're all getting out to explore Louisville and everything that it has to offer. I have been coming here over the last couple of years, and I'm absolutely in love with the city, not only for the built environment, the lovely traditional buildings. Main Street is amazing, the natural spaces, but the thing that I love the most is the hospitality. You can't find a mean person in this city. I'm absolutely convinced of it. And I think it has something to do with the fact that Louisville is a compassionate city, one of about 100 in the United States. And I didn't really know what that meant. And tonight we're going to hear from Lonnie and Mayor Fischer more about what it means to be a compassionate city and how that has impacted where and how they design their neighborhoods, the policies and the planning, because they have woven this idea, this value of a compassionate city throughout all of programming. And one strong aspect of a compassionate city is inclusion. Right now, I'd like to ask all of you who are first-time attendees to the Congress to stand up. No, please stay standing. Please stay standing. So for the last 5 years, I've had members come up. No, everyone, please stay standing. Wait, stay standing. For the last 5 years, I've had members look at who's standing to identify somebody, and at the bar after the plenary, I want you to go up and introduce yourself to one of these and to say welcome. As a movement, as in a Congress, The only way that we will grow and evolve is if we continually welcome new ideas, new insights, and new participants. So I am absolutely thrilled that every year we seem to be attracting more and more new folks. And that, my friends, is the strength of our ideas, that is the strength of the charter, and that is the strength of the movement. New this year, a few little announcements. New this year is that we're doing programming specifically for local governments. We've always been doing this, but this year in particular, we've strengthened it. It's now 2 days, and as part of this effort, we're having a local government breakfast, and for the first time, an elected officials lunch. We are all bound by a singular goal of building more great places, right? I mean, that's what the charter is. It's the 27 principles about how to do it, but the what is to build vibrant, prosperous places, places that we endure, places that we celebrate, and we're bounded by that. And I strongly feel that the only way we can achieve that goal is to partner with the local governments. So I'm absolutely thrilled that we're increasingly inviting more and including more local government officials and elected officials into our conversations, because that, my friends, with the brilliance of new urbanist members, with the power of local governments, that is how we're going to make change. Also, CNU a couple of weeks ago released our first report on equity and inclusive development. It's called Building Local Strength, Emerging Strategies for Inclusive Development. I'm really proud of the report. It's not perfect, but we're starting the conversation. Or rather, we're continuing the conversation that Emily Talon and others have been having over the several years, and we're hoping to really amplify it. And as part of this Congress, I think we have about 15 sessions that are weaving in and including these ideas about equitable and inclusive development. I really hope that this is the continuation of a very long conversation that we'll be having over several years, because that's the only way that we're going to fully realize the vision of the Charter, which states that design alone cannot solve our social and economic inequities, but that good urban design can and should be part of the solution. And that's what we're trying to do here in Louisville. Additionally, final announcement, additionally, we're thrilled with a whole series of international sessions that were curated by Stefanos Palazoides and Gianni Longo, and a forum on Colin Rowe by Diru Tadani. So I think that we'll have a wide range of sessions that every member of CNU, whether this is your first or whether this is your 27th, can find something to enjoy. Next slide, please, track leaders. And most of the Congress sessions were selected and curated by these CNU members, and we owe them deep thanks and gratitude. And particularly, clearly there's technical issues, we owe them deep thanks. So since it's not coming up, for those of you who curated a session, we had almost 26 members. I'd like to have you all stand so we can recognize you, since I don't have your pictures and everything up here. Please stand. Finally, I would like to recognize and thank the CNU 27 Local Host Committee and introduce Barry Alberts and David Tomes, our amazing co-chairs. And at the same time, I'd like to ask the rest of the Local Host Committee to please stand. Mary Ellen, I'm looking at you. I see you. Stand up. So the Congress is a lot of work. It's a tremendous amount of work, and CNU National and the Local Host Committee form a partnership to create a program that engages debate, discussion, learning, and teaching. It's an extraordinary amount of work, and my deepest hope is that you will benefit from all of this work over the next 4 days. And I hope that you really recognize the huge amount of work that David and Barry and the rest of the Local Host Committee have been absolutely amazing to work with. We owe them, and we owe everybody our thanks and gratitude. Thank you. Thank you.
So we know that once we get off the stage, the next step here is that Lynn formally opens the session. And our assumption was that, you know, she'll have a little crummy little gavel and bang it down and open the session. And we said, that's really not appropriate for Louisville. So on behalf of the local host committee, we are providing, to open the ceremony, a true Louisville slugger.
So, standing together, I hereby open the 27th annual meeting of the Congress for the New Urbanism. Yeah, thank you. I hope I get to take that home and have it at the CNU office. People can come. The strength of CNU really comes from the breadth and depth of its members. We've known this from the very beginning. They provide thought, you all provide thought leadership, innovative ideas, and provide counsel to others coming up through the movement. I'd like to take a moment now to remember those that we lost this year. This morning I was talking to Laura Clemens, and she put it perfectly. We're all beneficiaries of their work and their brilliance, even if we didn't know them personally. Patty Southard was a force of nature in King County, Washington. She was a lifelong advocate for social and environmental justice. She was also the unsung hero of CNU 25. At every step in that process, and all of our collaborative work before and after the Congress, Patty was there to help and to problem solve. It was the first day of spring break when I read on Facebook that she had passed. I immediately called up Abby, and we both cried. Same with Ben Hamilton Bailey. His work on creating shared streets was a passion for him and for everyone. He inspired a new generation of urbanists at CNU 22 in Buffalo. That's when I met him, right before I was coming out to be introduced. And it turns out he had been a Loeb Fellow a few years before I was. But more than his work, he was just the loveliest person. That's how Laura and I started talking today about how devastated she was about Ben's passing. I said, oh my God, I felt the exact same way. He made everyone feel welcomed and included, and he was happy to talk streets with just about anyone. I'm sure you've seen pictures of him lying down in a street, demonstrating just how wide it was. And Joe Duckworth was ahead of his time. As a partner with Robert Davis and Chris Lineberger at Acadia, Joe was honored as a National Builder of the Year, portrayed in The Last Harvest, and served as chair of the Chester County Planning Commission. I'm really sorry that I never got an opportunity to know Joe. I know Robert and Chris, and I'm sure he was just as amazing as they are. Bill Dennis was another dedicated and inspiring member, and here to tell you more about Bill Dennis's legacy is his very close friend, Rick Chelman.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, board members and everybody else for being here. It was definitely a pleasure to know Bill for more than 30 years. He was most definitely a design star. For those of you who knew him, that's one of the bigger statements you'll hear all week. He did some academic critiques and taught not enough. Would have been good if he had taught more and published more than he did. But his realm was really the design studio. That's where he did his thing. And it was the place where those of you who've been in design studios and worked on projects like this, the common denominator is always when you're trying to figure something out, somebody will say, when they've heard enough of the talk, draw it. And that's when it really came down to Bill's incredible expertise, because he could draw it. He could draw the site plan, he could draw a perspective, he could do a 3D model in SketchUp, he could do a watercolor. So it really wasn't a fair discussion if Bill was invited to the table to do some drawing. But always a pleasure. It actually took me a while on our projects throughout North America and around the world to realize that it wasn't Bill being rude when he would walk ahead of me when I had a camera, and I was trying to take a photograph of some location, and say, Bill, would you wait just a second? I want to get a shot of this street or this, you know, whatever it was. I thought for a long time he was just ignoring me, which he technically was, but actually he wasn't even hearing me. He was so immersed in the physical world and seeing what was out there and always learning from what had been done well and what had been done less than well. And it would show up later in his sketches. He'd sit down with a sketchbook in the studio and make a little sketch of what he'd seen and perhaps look at a photograph that I'd taken, wondering who the guy was in the photo with his back, you know, blocking most of it, and that would be him. So I've got more photos of his back than I need, but we can see more of those back at the hotel. One of the things about Bill, despite his incredible range of talent, he was not a bully, and he knew what he could do. He was proud of what he had done, but I never saw him run over anybody in a design session or any session. He was never mean-spirited. He was well-intentioned, and he had that comfort that comes from the ability to do things really, really well, that he didn't need to pound his chest or stand up at the front of the room and make, do a everybody look at me moment. In fact, one of the things that impressed me about Bill and many, many charrettes was the way he involved children. Because oftentimes, whether we were in wherever location, it happened a few times in Central America, many times in the United States, and always on his own charrettes, children would come in and Bill would instantly grab them and bring them into the design process and show them with his talent how to draw, help them draw things a little bit better, and on his own charrettes set up a children's table, not the children's table I had to sit at Thanksgiving dinner. This was the table of honor, and he would incorporate the children's drawings into the presentations. And it's interesting, one thing that we all know from charrettes is the more ideas you get, usually the better the results are, and Bill's incorporating the children was really pretty special and fun to see. Now, he was a gentleman, but you had to pay attention because he had a twinkle in his eye. And many, many times I saw him, especially on charrettes in other countries where he wasn't as well known as he might have been in the United States. He would start to tell a story, usually the first morning after everybody had settled in, but nobody knew each other. The work hadn't really commenced. And he would tell a story. I'm not going to try to relate the specifics, just what would happen. Eyebrows would start to raise, and sometimes hands would come to mouths, and the people would be ready to call the police or otherwise report this inappropriate behavior. At the exact moment, they would realize he wasn't going there. He wasn't crossing that line. It was funny, it was fun, and it was a real icebreaker to help bring the team together. He did that every day of his life at all levels. He was really, really fun that way. He was a great believer in the CNU. When we had the first sessions at the CNU, when the organization was first starting and the groups were much smaller than this, we had council sessions which were by invitation only, and Bill actually ran 2 of those, which was a lot of work for one guy. And he was a charter member. He signed the charter along with several of the rest of us in Charleston back in '96, I think it was. He was a great believer in design, and he came to the congresses, he participated, he believed in everything that what folks here are doing and trying to do. Design is a very powerful and missing aspect in a lot of public life, and if we do it right, as he did, things will get better. He was a great volunteer. He volunteered a lot. If I called him for, say, the flood victims in the Midwest that happened a couple of times, when Andres called him about the Katrina, following the Katrina hurricane, the Haitian victims, never even missed a heartbeat. He was there. Money made no difference. He just wanted to help because he knew as a great designer and artist, he could help, and he did help, and he did good work in many, many locations. So I have to tell you, I miss him every day. He was a very, very good friend. And I'm sorry. If we can just try to make the CNU do even better with its design work and design excellence, that will be a legacy in Bill's memory. And thank you very much for taking this time for him.
Thanks, Rick. That was an amazing tribute. I'd like to take a moment now and ask everyone for a moment of silence to remember all of the people that we've lost this year. We wanted to do the tributes of those who passed this year to honor their legacy, because their work, their ideas, and their contributions live on in the legacy projects. One of the things, slide on the legacy, excellent. One of the things that makes our annual Congress unique is the legacy projects, which started 5 years ago under Doug Farr's leadership. And the legacy projects are where we work collaboratively with local community groups and underserved communities to work through collaboratively a whole series of design challenges. We do this through design and the execution, and it's pro bono community design in about 3 months leading up to the Congress. This year we completed 4, which is a huge undertaking for both the national and the local firms. And it was an extraordinary process. The full teams will be presenting all of their work in 2 back-to-back sessions on Saturday. These sessions are open to the public, and I hope that you can all join us. But tonight we're giving the teams, the last several years, I've tried to talk a little bit about the legacy projects, and it has fallen flat every year. So I'm fixing that mistake, and this year I've asked the teams to give them an opportunity to give you a brief overview of their work and their results, and to present the final products to their partners. So right now I'd like to invite Megan O'Hara from the Urban Design Associates to the stage to tell us about their project in the Russell neighborhood.
Thank you, Lynn. The 18th Street Corridor Legacy Project focused on an important north-south connector in the Russell neighborhood in West Louisville. The dedicated project sponsor, One West, is a development corporation, community development corporation, committed to elevating the entire city through equitable commercial development growth in West Louisville. The team, Urban Design Associates, Ray Gindros, Zimmerman Volk Associates, and One West staff, built on the Choice Neighborhoods planning in the Russell neighborhood. The neighborhood has received 3 grants from HUD, a Choice Planning Grant, an Action Activities Grant, and a $29.5 million implementation grant. The community-led process is both the foundation and the most important outcome. Over 180 residents, stakeholders, and community members participated in the workshop. Their vision of growing local and minority-owned businesses and property ownership, building a healthy food destination, and creating spaces for families is local, equitable, and people-focused. We asked stakeholders and community members to identify strengths with green dots and future visions with blue dots. The results were clear clusters around key nodes that became the focus areas for the initiatives. In this way, the plan will act as economic flypaper, working to attract community-focused investment and getting it to in a way that benefits community members and residents. At the neighborhood center of 18th and Muhammad Ali, initiatives include the renovation of 3 shotgun houses into incubator restaurants with outdoor dining space, pop-up activation space, community serving ground floor retail, new streetscapes, mixed income rental housing, and attainable home ownership. At Broadway and 18th, with the realignment of Dixie Highway and the intersection of 2 future BRT lines, Initiatives include One West redevelopment and renovation of 6 buildings, including the historic Royal Theater, new streetscape, and connections to a new YMCA, which is opening in the fall of 2019. These efforts would establish that intersection as a green gateway to the Russell neighborhood. Since the workshop, One West has begun the process of getting architectural quotes and construction quotes for the rehab and redesign of the shotgun houses into the restaurants. And they're also partnering with Chef Space, the adjacent kitchen incubator, to identify chefs who can move into the spaces once rehabbed. Louisville Metro has been an instrumental partner in helping with the due diligence steps for the renovations. The UDA team is extremely appreciative to the Russell community, One West, Louisville Metro, and CNU for inviting us to work on this project, and to Joshua Tabernacle Baptist Church for hosting the workshop. We now present the plan to Pam Haynes, owner of Sweet Peaches on 18th Street.
Thank you so much. On behalf of the Russell neighborhood, I want to say thank you, and thank you again.
Woodlawn Avenue is the heart of the Beachmont neighborhood suburb, a thriving historic neighborhood on Olmsted's Southern Parkway. It's the most diverse international neighborhood in the city of Louisville, and it has an amazing, affordable historic housing stock. The most impressive thing to us about this entire legacy project is that all the work was done before we got there. And I don't say that lightly, because we had phenomenal partners with the Beachmont Neighborhood Association and the Center for Neighborhoods, a local nonprofit. They had done amazing convening and visioning. They had had a better block program, and all we had to do was draw. So it was really a very rewarding experience for us, and perhaps the most impressive part was the partnership with the city of Louisville, who sent their planning director, their city engineer. They helped negotiate many of the things that we were proposing, and they helped us refine them in such a way that they actually could be advocates for implementation. So our scope included, first of all, simply identity. It was a branding initiative for the local businesses, and Matt Lambert and Scott Doyen worked on ways in which to build a visible brand with a graphic sidewalk and crosswalk at a mid-block location that was a part of the Better Block program, a new identity, world on Woodlawn, and a logo that went with it. Another important factor was adaptive reuse and historic preservation of the mid-century Main Street buildings, and that was primarily done by a local partner, Work Architects. There were many opportunities for small-scale infill, and you see Matt and DPZ provided some great ideas for strategic sites. This one happens to be at the intersection of Woodlawn and Southern. Many of the issues that we were faced with were connectivity and pedestrian safety, and Mallory Bacchus from CNU worked with Matt on a number of those interventions. The final big issue that Center for Neighborhoods gave us as a goal was inclusive public space, and Cassie Nichols, our local partner, landscape architect, worked on revitalization of some existing public spaces as well as new ones. And then finally, Hazel Boris really focused on supporting local business. And the entire report actually became, the goal of it was to become a business plan for the local businesses. And with Bob Gibbs doing an amazing retail study and making some really robust projections, I love the way Bob ties it to that you have to do what's recommended to actually get to these numbers. It's a good reminder to us all of the importance of implementation. I'm happy to say that since March, Center for Neighborhoods has been testing the World on Woodlawn branding with local business owners to tremendous success and has been working with the City of Louisville on the details of implementing the crosswalk. And I would like to present the World on Woodlawn recommendations to Terry O'Mahony, and I never can get that right, the president of the Beachmont Neighborhood Association.
Thank you very much. It was an honor and a privilege to work with all of the folks from the Congress for New Urbanism and with our city partners, the Center for Neighborhoods, and we think we've got a really good plan going, and we just hope that we can get with some partners and the city and implement as much of this plan as possible. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy your time in Louisville, have some bourbon and other stuff.
We have a really big team. The best. So first, as we're all gathering here, I think we were really lucky for this project as a national partner. We also happen to have an office here in Louisville. So this project really means a lot to us. I wanted to start by first thanking the Congress of New Urbanism and Lynn and her team and Margaret and everyone and Barry and David for getting us involved in this project. Secondly, for those of you who are lucky enough to be able to be at the session yesterday to hear the mayor's words, we really want to thank the mayor and his team and the advanced planning group for really pushing for a project of this importance and really treating the city as a laboratory. I think that's really where this project is really trying to be innovative and push for those sorts of things. For our city to be that laboratory and to achieve those goals, you cannot do that without the people on the ground who make it happen. The Owsley Brown Foundation and MSD, the Metropolitan Sewer District, really stepped up financially and as participants to make sure that this happened. It was informed and really participated throughout the entire project. And of course, none of those things are even remotely possible without an excellent project champion. They're the most important person because they're going to go get this work done. And the Kentucky Waterways Alliance and Ward Wilson, who's standing here with us right now, they are the ever-present presence about water across our state, across our city. When you think about Kentucky, Kentucky is a water state. We have the 90,000 miles of streams. We have in Louisville the Ohio River and hundreds of miles of streams. So when we were approached about this project, nobody really knew what to do with it because it's a 6-mile corridor, and how do you do that in 3 days? But for us in our office here at Gresham Smith and our partners at Biohabitats, that actually got us really excited. This was our sweet spot, thinking about where infrastructure meets placemaking. We bring kind of water engineering, transportation engineering, landscape architecture, and planning all around the table. So thinking about how all those layers meet and where we can innovate in those places really got us excited to get going. So the scope was, how do you connect? We started with connecting the zoo to the river. And for us, that was really complex. And I'm not going to get into all the details, but the South Fork of Beargrass Creek is one of the most impaired streams in our city. It's forgotten. You'd have a hard time going and finding it. So that was really where we started to set our goals for what this project was about, reconnecting Beargrass Creek. So our 3 main goals of the project, reconnecting people to the creek physically and emotionally. To get people to care about it, they had to be able to get down to it and see it. Talking about health, both ecological health as well as human health, and the role that the stream and the network of streams could play in that. And then ultimately, because this is CNU and we're urban designers, thinking about creating destinations. So this thing that nobody could find if they really wanted to, how do we totally retrofit and reorient that relationship and make the stream, make that 6 miles of waterfront property that people are proud of, that people really want to get down to and see. And what you'll see Saturday when we present is everything from enormous, large-scale projects, from large kind of resiliency-focused parks, to streetscapes, all of those sorts of things. But it was really important to us and our entire team and to CNU that legacy projects have to lead to action. So throughout the entire process, we really focused on big ideas built on incremental action. So what are the things that you could do and go start tomorrow? And I'm really proud to say that since this happened, and we got some wonderful coverage from the Leo and a lot of the local news channels, our firm and Ward, we've been reached out to by local developers who are in mid-planning stages along the creek who wanted to rethink what they were doing just because of this legacy project. We've been working with Trees Louisville to just say, hey, let's go start planting trees tomorrow. So we've already been meeting on site and talking about those sorts of things. And we have had, I'm really proud to say, for MSD, we've had wonderful meetings with all of their kind of top leadership about how this sort of innovative thinking, again, about how infrastructure can be treating things related to environment, related to culture, related to social relationships, et cetera. They want to know how they can help guide and help implement those pieces of the project. So that to me was absolutely amazing. So with that, I think we'd like to present Ward with the report, and then because we are from Louisville, and one of the most important things that you do with water in Kentucky, we got Ward a bottle of bourbon too. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Good evening. How are you? How are you? Doing well? All right, there we go. Cool. Fourth and final, best for last, obviously. So we worked on the East Portland neighborhood, and the idea here was to figure out how to connect people from downtown, where we are today, towards the west to a neighborhood called East Portland. And the challenge there is that we've got freeways that cut us off from downtown and the neighborhood. We've got freeways that cut us off from the neighborhood itself towards the waterfront. And we've got a landowner that is the majority landowner that is involved with long distance trucking and shipping. So you would think inherently their interest is not about public realm and plazas and placemaking and streets, right? But it turned out that through the course of our two-day charrette, that they were a phenomenal partner. This is Mercer Transportation. They've already begun to build pocket parks in the neighborhood. They're interested in their employees having a diversity of places to eat, a place to walk, a place to exercise, a way to get to the waterfront park, which, by the way, is, when I'm referring to that, is the phase 4 of the waterfront park. So those of you who will join us tomorrow for the New Urbanist morning run will get to see some of the finished pieces of the waterfront park. Well, phase 4 is now coming and slated for implementation on the west side of downtown, and our whole goal was to be able to connect the neighborhoods, the downtown, and the community back to the riverfront to have exercise and the ability to be physically active, but also to make what we call the mini Louisville Loop. So the Louisville Loop is a 100-mile circular trail, and this would be a mini loop of about 2.5 miles that would connect people to the waterfront and then through this neighborhood. Now, one of the biggest challenges that we faced in the project was getting people to be, excited about walking, cycling, et cetera, on Main Street, which is a 4-lane, one-way street that is overbuilt for the number of cars that travel there today. So our approach was to listen to a lot of people who are in the neighborhood or adjacent to the neighborhood, what their needs are, understand what the programming possibilities are, but then think about how some of the quick wins that we could achieve in the street, from a road diet to a shared street at the entrance to the park, where the park will be built at 10th Street, and get people excited about the possibility to transform this space very, very quickly and inexpensively. So we had a very lean team in doing that. We had 3 of us from Street Plans, and then wonderful partners from the Waterfront Park Corporation, and of course Louisville Downtown Partnership. And the vision here is that, yes, there's a concept of the loop itself, but there's also 5 individual projects that could be implemented at a very low cost to get this going and to show that there's really a population of people that are ready for some transformation on the west side of the highway. So with that, we presented 5 different ideas, and one of them I think is really prime for implementation very quickly, which is the 10th Street shared street, which would be a painted street, a festival kind of street where you could close it and open it, close it and open it for events and activation at the gateway to the park. So with that, I'm going to hand the plan over to Rebecca Matheny and Deborah Belitsky from the Waterfront Park. And say it was a great process for us and really exciting, and we hope that a lot of this starts to come forth very quickly, because that was the intent. Thank you.
I want to thank all of the teams again for the work that they put into this. If you can imagine, those of you who do charrettes, to organize and execute one with no fee is quite a feat. So, and that's what we like to do, is to give back to the Louisville committee, the Louisville community, also to recognize the work of the local host committee to tee these up. You probably heard each presenter talk about how they're moving into implementation right now. And the CNU legacy projects have a 90% implementation rate. That's the highest implementation rate of any technical assistance. Because that, my friends, is how we roll at CNU. All right, right now I'd like to welcome Barry Alberts back to the stage to introduce Lonnie Ali to talk about the legacy of her husband, Muhammad Ali. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn, and thank you all for being in Louisville this week for CNU 27. We hope that you enjoy yourself and that you take in all the city has to offer. And as you saw from Lewis, we do take seriously what we believe is the true theme of this conference, where new urbanism meets the new burbanism. Thank you. So when Lynn and David and I first began discussions about the opening plenary session, we really wanted to begin with a discussion of a topic that is especially meaningful to have take place during CNU's visit to Louisville, something that is part of the DNA of this community. And very quickly, the issue of compassion and what it means to be a compassionate city rose to the top. This has been a key element of Mayor Fischer's goals for the city ever since he took office in 2011. But as he will explain in his comments in a few minutes, Greg's focus on Louisville as a compassionate city was in many ways inspired by Muhammad Ali and the work of the Ali Center here in Louisville. So it made sense to invite Lonnie Ali and ask her if she would address you tonight. Thankfully, she graciously accepted. It is a distinct honor and privilege for me to be standing here this evening introducing Lonnie Ali. But it pales in comparison in both honor and privilege that was afforded to me in having the opportunity to work closely with Lonnie Muhammad on the development of the Muhammad Ali Center, something that began in 1997 and has turned into more than a 2-decade friendship. It has been, without a doubt, the most remarkable and rewarding experience of my professional career. So I suspect all of you here, if you've been citizens of planet Earth this last half-century, know quite a lot about Muhammad Ali, a lot of it actually from Muhammad Ali. But what about Lonnie Ali? Well, Lonnie first met Muhammad in 1963 as the 21-year-old Cassius Clay held court among the children on the front porch of his parents' home next door to Lonnie's home. As you can see here, that's Lonnie in the middle at age 6. Shy, and as she said, scared to death, Cassius playfully told her that one day he would marry her. 23 years later, he did. And that was no doubt the best decision that Muhammad Ali ever made. Since their marriage in 1986, Lonnie, who holds a degree in psychology from Vanderbilt University and an MBA from UCLA, has not only been the person who has managed Ali's business interests, but she was Muhammad's true soul partner in every imaginable way. She's a remarkable person in her own right, a leading advocate for Parkinson's research, for the empowerment of women, for many other causes. She has been described as the perfect partner of the most recognized man on the planet. And that is because, as someone close to them once said, quote, "She understands far better than anyone that Muhammad Ali didn't just belong to her, he belonged to the entire world." And we all need to thank her for sharing him with all of us. Since Muhammad's death in 2016, Lonnie has remained involved in ensuring that the spirit of Muhammad Ali continues to inspire people, especially our younger generations, across the world, through the Ali Center Humanitarian Awards and through the Generation Ali Initiative and a variety of other ways. Generation Ali is a global movement that inspires a new generation of leaders, both young and young at heart, to achieve greatness on their own at a local level, national level, or a global level, to find their own voices, their own passion, their own compassion. The grassroots movement draws its inspiration from Muhammad Ali's 6 core principles: confidence, conviction, dedication, giving, respect, and spirituality. And so just before Lonnie comes up, please indulge me for one more moment, for one personal note, if I may. All of us in this room this evening, I suspect, have worked on projects during our lives and careers that we're especially proud of. They may have been interesting, they may have challenged us, and hopefully they made our communities better places to live and to thrive. But it is quite unusual to be involved in a project that helped make each of us personally a better person, more caring, more respectful of others, more giving, more compassionate. Working on the Ali Center with Lonnie Muhammad had that impact on me by seeing every day and being inspired every day by the example they set and their impact on others. Often this happened without a word being said. It was remarkable. It was magical. If you visit the Ali Center, you'll hear Howard Bingham, Muhammad and Lonnie's long-term friend, say, "I love walking behind Muhammad and watching how he interacts with people. He literally lifts them up." No truer words were ever spoken. Lonnie and Muhammad Ali lifted me up, and the experience of knowing them has made me a better person as a result of it. And for that, I am eternally grateful. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lonnie Ali.
Good evening. Thank you, Barry. It's been a real pleasure to be here in Louisville with all of you, and especially heartwarming to share this stage with Mayor Fischer, who you will hear from in a little bit, and discuss a topic that is very close to both of our hearts. I suspect it's rather unusual for this audience to hear from someone like me, as I don't often address primarily people who are primarily focused on city design. But when Barry first approached me, and then Lynn, to address the Congress on Louisville as a city of compassion, and then explained your mission and your work, it suddenly felt like an important opportunity for a couple of reasons. First, it's an opportunity to talk about one of the things that makes Louisville special. Since you will be spending the next few days here, I think you will figure that out too. Louisville is the place where Muhammad and I both grew up, where we spent years developing the Muhammad Ali Center, and where Muhammad now rests in peace. It is in many ways a special place, certainly for me. Second, this platform provides me an opportunity to talk about one particular aspect of what brings a place together, a city together, a community together. And this, after all, is what cities are all about. It's about interacting with each other, about communitas, which literally means a place where people treat each other equally. And if you know anything about Muhammad, you will know that Muhammad treated everyone exactly the same way, no matter their place in the world, their status, their politics, their color, or their religion. His connection was one of human being to another. No matter our differences, he recognized that we share human values, aspirations, and ideally, respect for one another. In researching today's address, it became clear that many of the principles of new urbanism relate to this aspect of community, of communitas. One of the CNU principles is to bring people of diverse ages, races, and incomes into daily interaction, strengthening the personal and civic bonds essential to an authentic community. Let me emphasize, strengthening the personal and civic bonds essential to an authentic community. I might suggest that this is also essential to a compassionate community as well. While reviewing elements of city design and new urbanism, I was especially taken with the focus of walkability, on front porches and front doors, a place to interact with your neighbors. That was the way Muhammad grew up, with walkability in his neighborhood, with houses with front doors and front porches, where inevitably families and neighbors would gather at various points during the day. As a child and a young adult, Muhammad, then Cassius, liked visiting his neighbors and hanging out on their front porches. He didn't find a door that he would not knock on or ring a doorbell to bring people out. It helped shape his approach to the world going forward. Muhammad was, I guess you might say, a human front porch. He always focused on the world in front of him or around him, and his front door, as you might say, it was always open to a few people, a few hundred, or even a few thousand. It depended on the day. For me, a good day was a few. But if he had his way, he would literally have interacted with every person in the world. And if you ever walked down a street with him, and Barry had this opportunity, no matter how empty or desolate the walk began, you would be amazed as to the life that erupted on that street by the time he reached the end of it. Muhammad engendered his own street life, so I guess perhaps he should be made an honorary new urbanist. Yeah. He would think so. But what I really want to discuss with you tonight is the concept of compassion, what it means to Muhammad and I, and how important it is to his legacy. Muhammad may have been known in this country primarily as a famous athlete, or as he tended to put it himself, the greatest. But across the world, he is known as much, if not more, as a humanitarian. Some of you might ask, why is that? Well, it's because he was one of the few people on earth who was able to touch people of all kinds, from the heart, with a heartfelt compassion and the belief that everyone shares a common humanity. With his fame and connection to people across the globe, it brought offers to build a museum, show places, extolling his accomplishments from cities all over the world. But Muhammad and I wanted none of that. We wanted to create a place that would inspire people from all over the world to become the best that they could be, to have the courage and dedication and the conviction to make themselves better people, no matter their station in life, but rather on the principles and the values that guided his life, principles that continue even after he is gone. This focus and inspiration became the impetus for the development of the Muhammad Ali Center. And most importantly of all, it absolutely had to be located here in Louisville, the place where he grew up, the place that shaped his values, the place that provided the basis for who he was to become, the place that enabled a skinny little boy with no boxing skills to become the most recognized human being on the face of the earth. Returning to Louisville to build the Ali Center embodied the idea that no matter where you live, because in truth, that's just geography, no matter your station in life, because that's something you can't always control, you can follow your heart and your values and become as great as you can be. Maybe not as great or famous as Muhammad, but the best version of yourself. That's what Muhammad did. He became the best version of himself. And the best version of yourself is to be kind, compassionate, and respectful to those others that share your space. As he often stated, service to others is the rent we pay for our room here on earth. And I hope during your stay in Louisville this week, you get a chance to visit the Ali Center. It was a very, very special place for Muhammad, and it continues to carry Muhammad's legacy and inspiration. While the Ali Center certainly highlights the accomplishments of Muhammad's career, it is focused around those principles that centered and guided Muhammad throughout his life. They are confidence, conviction, dedication, respect, giving, and spirituality. Needless to say, it is a place that remains very dear to me. When Muhammad and I began working with Barry on the Ali Center here, we began to hear about the Charter of Compassion and the Compassionate Cities Initiative. It was a relatively new movement then, but when we became aware of its basic tenets, it lined up perfectly with the principles of Muhammad that became the guiding principles of the center. The belief that a compassionate world is a peaceful world. The belief that a compassionate world is possible when every man, woman, and child treat each other as they wish to be treated, with dignity, equity, and respect. The belief that all human beings are born with the capacity for compassion, something Muhammad believed with every fiber of his being, and that it must be cultivated for human beings to survive and to thrive. So the center worked initially with this initiative, and Louisville became one of the first and the largest U.S. city to adopt the Charter for Compassion. And Mayor Fischer, as you will hear in a moment, has taken the torch from Muhammad and made this a driving aspect of his work to make Louisville a model city of compassion. The city of Ali and Louisville, the city of compassion, are synonymous. But what exactly does it mean to be a compassionate city? Well, this certainly differs from one place to another, and the mayor will address that. But it's difficult, nonetheless, to teach people to be compassionate. It is not something one gets lectured on. Magically, people change. But it is something that people can become inspired to become once a shining light becomes visible. For many, Muhammad was and continues to be that shining light, that beacon of hope and inspiration. This gets to the core and essence of Muhammad and his impact on community, his country, and his world. The nation has certainly changed its attitude toward Muhammad over the years. Those much younger than me are amazed and often non-believing. At one time, Muhammad was one of the most hated people in the country by a good portion of its citizens. How could this gentle soul, this UN ambassador of peace, be that same person? He must have changed tremendously, right? Well, truthfully, Muhammad's convictions never changed. He stayed true to his principles and his core values as his light shone brightly as a beacon for others. Many of the nations saw Muhammad as an inspiration to African Americans who were taught to be ashamed of the color of their skin. Muhammad's light shone bright when he talked proudly about the beauty of his black skin. It saw Muhammad as an inspiration to millions who opposed the Vietnam War, and his light shone bright when he stood up for his beliefs, accepting the consequences of his actions. It saw Muhammad inspiring those with religious beliefs different from most of those in the nation, and his light shone bright when he courageously changed his name and embraced his religion. An inspiration to those concerned about human dignity, poverty, tolerance across the globe. And his light shone bright when he traveled to all corners of the world on humanitarian missions over the past 4 decades of his life as an emissary of goodwill, compassion, and hope. That light, that beacon, shone bright until he breathed his last breath. And perhaps Muhammad's inspiration shone most brilliantly that warm summer night at the opening ceremonies of the 1996 Olympic Games in Atlanta, when he lit that very huge cauldron of light and stood tall and proud, despite the ravages of Parkinson's disease, in clear view, as 3 billion people around the world recognize that they too can stand proud, tall, regardless of the obstacles they may be facing. Muhammad was and remains a shining, shimmering, radiant beacon of inspiration. You know, Muhammad always believed in himself and did what he believed was the right thing to do, following his core values and doing what he could do to help others every day, regardless of public opinion or its personal consequences. While many, even his initial detractors, have over the years come to understand, respect, and admire his conviction and dedication, in truth, he had never changed. He had never wavered in his passion and his beliefs. Whether hated or beloved, Muhammad always followed his heart. He would not be compromised. All he did, as he would say simply yet eloquently, was stand up for what he believed. Again, what does this have to do with being a compassionate city? Well, you as city planners and designers know much better than I. At the end of the day, it's all about people interacting and caring about others. This is what energized Muhammad every day of his life, even when it was difficult for him to do so physically. It's about designing places that show compassion about the people who live there, whether it's a village in Africa that lacks electricity or clean water, or neighborhoods in Louisville that have elevated rates of cancer. It's about giving our kids a healthier environment, as Greenheart is doing here in the Beachmont neighborhood. And it's about people celebrating their shared humanity. If Muhammad has a lasting impact, it's not because of his athletic accomplishments, although there were many. It will always be because of his ability to inspire people in many different ways. If one of these ways is to inspire them to be more compassionate toward their neighbors, toward others who may be struggling, toward their fellow citizens, then this is the true legacy of Muhammad Ali. The city of Louisville showed its shared compassion and humanity as it poured out its heart during the week of Muhammad's passing and his funeral. You may have seen some of the coverage on TV, but unless you were here in Louisville that week, it is hard to truly grasp what occurred. The entire city stopped. Not to extol Muhammad as its most famous native son, or even the most recognized human being on the planet. It was quite the contrary. It paid tribute to him for his humanity, which he shared with everyone, here as well as those who came in pilgrimage. Men, women, and children from every continent came to be present that week and pay their final respects. It could have been utter chaos, as I'm sure the mayor may have worried about. No amount of planning or security would have been enough to handle what occurred. But everyone everyone in this city, without direction or advanced planning, treated Muhammad and their fellow citizens, the hundreds of thousands of people who came out, with enormous respect, compassion, and humanity. It was the embodiment of a compassionate community sharing a human connection, a shared experience. And isn't that exactly what any community should embody? Thank you. Thank you.
I can't think of a better way to open our Congress than hearing that speech. So thank you, Lonnie, for that, that speech that we won't forget for a long time. Now I'd like to welcome Mary Ellen Wiederwald, Chief of Louisville Forward, to the stage. Also one of the co-chairs of the local host committee, to introduce the fabulous Mayor Fischer. Thank you.
This is the second time in my career I've had to follow Lonnie Ali behind a lectern. It's a little intimidating. Welcome to Louisville, everyone. We're so glad to see you. I had the pleasure of standing before you in Savannah last year and encouraging you to come, so it's so good to see so many of you here and to have found some new friends. Last year we promised you some good bourbon. I hope you're already into that. If not, we'll take care of that this evening. We promised you some wonderful programming, and we certainly have that. We were not so audacious as to promise you great weather, but we have exceeded expectations. So great time to go out and be an urbanist and go for a walk. Well, I have one of the greatest jobs in the city of Louisville because I get to oversee economic and community development every day. I get to sell Louisville and brag about Louisville, so if you want to know more about Louisville, come see me. I also get to work with people like you every day, which is the richness of the work. I work with city planners and city dreamers. I work with neighborhood activists. I work with developers. This earful of advocates and this earful of developers. It's a great job to be in the middle of figuring out how you build a great city. Well, one thing you need for a great city is great leadership. And so it is my honor to introduce my mayor and my friend, Greg Fischer, tonight. He was just reelected last year to his third term with a vote of confidence, a hugely affirming vote. That is a recognition of the progress our city has made during his first 8 years in office. In that time in office, Mayor Fischer has earned praise from his fellow mayors, who in a poll in Politico voted him the most innovative mayor in America. He was also named the Public Official of the Year by Governing Magazine, and in 2020, he will become the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, leading all of the great city thinkers and dreamers. Before becoming mayor, Greg Fischer spent 30 years in business, including co-founding and growing a global company, investing in numerous successful startups, and earning national recognition as the Inc. Magazine Entrepreneur of the Year. And I guarantee you he brings that entrepreneurial spirit to what we do every day in city government. Today, Mayor Fischer approaches public service with the belief that each day in an office is an honor and an opportunity to maximize for the people of our hometown. That approach embodies the guidance of the champ, who reminded us always to make the days count. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mayor Greg Fischer.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you, Mary Ellen. I'm so impressed by your all's ability to pronounce Louisville, by the way. Everybody's getting it right. Usually it's all over the place, so fast students here. I appreciate that. And I just want to say the partnership and citizenship and the legacy of Lonnie and the Muhammad Ali family, y'all were just really treated to something special there. Lonnie does not give a lot of speeches because there's so many demands on her to do so, and that was an incredible delivery, and we're really thankful to have Lonnie and the entire Ali family in our city. A couple thank yous before I start. Barry Alberts, David Toms, the local host committee, CEO Lynn Richards. I really appreciate everybody coming together, selecting our city, first off, to host the CNU 27, and for all of our local folks that have put this work together. Thank you all very, very much for producing a great conference here. And thank all of you all for coming to Louisville. It's quite an honor for us. We really appreciate it. We hope it's a testimony to the work that we're trying to do to create a city of innovation, a city of entrepreneurship, a compassionate city, and an equitable city. And I think our country is looking for two cities right now to kind of help us find our way through the fog that I believe that we're in. Tonight, I am going to discuss how Louisville has used techniques around social innovation to help build this place that we call home. Lonnie eloquently described Muhammad's story. His values and his legacy serve as guides and inspirations to us as we work to create the future that I believe people deserve in our city and that they demand in our city. And what really made Ali so notable was a combination of a lot of unique things. Strength, speed, coordination, charisma, intelligence, personality. He came of age in a time when the TV generation was just upon us. The Vietnam War, civil rights. It was a time when the nation was in a state like a cauldron. So he combined those times and those gifts with an incredible work ethic. That was the thing he was always disappointed about. People would say how pretty he was, how fast he was, how brave he was. And he just said, why don't they say that I just outworked everybody? That's why I was the greatest. He put in the road work. So he created this platform, unlike anything the world had ever seen, and then he used compassion as that magic sauce with that platform to inspire others. And I believe that we're all put on the face of the earth to make it a better place, to help each other, to lift each other up. So we put the spotlight on the champ, on Muhammad Ali and many others, because it draws people to our city. And when they're drawn to our city, when they visit the Ali Center or they help us with our compassion work, they leave better equipped to make their world a better place, make their city a better place, make their street corner a better place. So in doing that, we believe we're fulfilling our mission as human beings. So this combination of things is what made Ali the person they called the greatest of all time. I think he's the one that came up with that nickname for himself. He was very confident, but he was. And his legacy is a proud example of really when I reflect on the role that I have and look at the history of our city as part of arguably our city's DNA. Abraham Lincoln was born and spent his early years not far from here. The first Jewish person to serve as a Supreme Court Justice, Louis Brandeis, is from our city. We were the first city in the South, we're kind of the northernmost part of the South, to pass a fair housing ordinance, an ordinance that both Muhammad Ali and Dr. Martin Luther King fought for in 1967. We're the first city in Kentucky and one of the first in the South to pass a fairness ordinance, celebrating 20 years this year. It's Pride Week right now, too, by the way, so on Friday night at 7 o'clock, we're having our Pride Parade, which will be a great time if you're not doing anything. We're starting at 7 p.m. at Market and Campbell Streets in Nulu, so come on over and join us in the Pride Parade. We're home of two large seminaries, Presbyterian and Baptist seminaries. We're home of the Festival of Faiths and the Center for Interfaith Relations here. So we got lots of interfaith community that's really focused more on shared spirituality, one common heart. And then we're site of Thomas Merton's 1958 Epiphany, and it is marked right across the street from the Sealback. And there's a historical marker there at 4th and Muhammad Ali. So please check that out. It's a block and a half from here, and I want to take you to that time. It was 1958. Thomas Merton, a monk from the Abbey of Gethsemane, would come in and out of Louisville quite a bit. I never quite understood that. Monks are supposed to stay at the monastery. But he had to travel, and his abbot would allow him to do so. History has it that he spent time in the bar at the Sealback as well, by the way. It's a nice bar if you haven't checked it out. But it was at that street corner in 1958. So at that time, that would have been a hustling, bustling street corner. People would have been shopping. They would have been coming to beautiful theaters like this. And his epiphany is what he said. Quote, "In Louisville, at the corner of 4th and Walnut, in the center of the shopping district, I was suddenly overwhelmed with the realization that I loved all these people, that they were mine and I was theirs. And if only everybody could realize this, but it cannot be explained. There is no way of telling people that they are all walking around shining like the sun." This beautiful metaphor of the goodness in all of us that we're all born with, the light inside of each of us, is what provides us inspiration. And it's these forebears of history, this epiphany, that brought us to the focus of compassion, to our work at Louisville Metro Government. Because we believe that our city should be a platform for human potential to flourish. That's what cities are when people come together, platforms. So for what? Let me say it one more time. We believe that our city should be a platform for human potential to flourish. That's our definition of compassion. It's an action word. It's not just empathy, it's what do you do with it? The work we do to help human beings have flourishing potential in our community. And so I'm not a lifelong politician, thankfully. And my work in the private sector taught me that when you treat everybody with dignity and respect, when you train people, when you share profits, when you empower people, wonderful things can happen. And the joy that you have in work becomes a vehicle for you to have more power, to do good with your family, with your neighborhood, with your place of worship. So this is what all organizations should be about. So those experiences gave me an unshakable conviction that if you treat people with respect and train and empower and do all the right things, they not only rise to the occasion, but there's really no other entity that can compete with you, because most people don't follow just this basic formula for success. So I always did a lot of volunteer work when I was in the private sector, and I said, can we bring this notion of compassion and high performance to a city government where we could allocate resources in a more effective way and try to change the culture of a city, evolve the culture of a city so that it, in fact, could be a platform for human potential to flourish. And that's every part of the city. Roads, bridges, buildings, parks, buses, all the interactions that we have together. Now, when you think about it, it's really not a new idea. People move to cities in a belief that they can achieve more by being around other people. That's why cities developed in the first place. It's why we live in an urbanizing world. According to the latest U.S. Census, 81% of Americans live in urban areas. 90+% of the GDP of our country is in urban areas. 95% of GDP growth comes in cities. And we all know, according to the UN, 68% of the global population will live in urban areas by 2050. So the question becomes, how do you make a city a platform for human potential? All these things that we're talking about here, that Lonnie's talked about, that I've talked about, I haven't found anybody that doesn't agree with the notion of compassion. Republican, Democrat, white, black, Muslim, Christian, everybody's on board. But how do you do it? And how Ali and Thomas Merton in our compassionate history anytime I could. Compassion helps focus and channel that instinct in a way that builds what I call social muscle. And that social muscle is the connective tissue that binds our community together, particularly in challenging times. Every family, every city is going to have a challenge, and it could be really severe. The question is, how do you respond? Do you turn on each other, or do you turn in? To develop those social muscles, we knew we needed to make public commitments and to organize, activate. On November 11 of 2011, the Louisville Metro Council and I formally committed to making Louisville a compassionate city by signing a resolution with the Charter for Compassion, committed to a 10-year Compassionate City campaign to identify community issues that need to be addressed and took action to alleviate pain and suffering in our community. At the same time, an organization called Compassion in Louisville was created. This is a grassroots network of organizations who've adopted the Compassion Resolution and work to raise awareness and champion the growth of compassion through connections with different public and private organizations. A steering committee and work groups were formed to focus on youth education, elderly, health care, neighborhoods. Compassionate Louisville work continues to this moment. We also created an event called Give a Day, an annual festival of volunteerism. Who teaches most of us about compassion? Who was your first teacher of compassion? If you're like me, it's your mom. So, first Give a Day, dedicated to my mom. Several hundred people turned out. It's evolved into a week of service, and it just continues to grow. This year in April, during Give a Day week, in partnership with Metro United Way, we broke our own world record for compassion with 235,000 volunteers and acts of compassion. That's about 1/3 of our city. So imagine if 1/3 of the United States of America stopped for a week and just helped each other. That would be about 115 million people in our country lifting their hands out, opening a door, just helping people. It's really a simple notion. Why don't we do it? I can tell you during the week of service, I love the looks of joy on people's face, because this can be measured physically. When we help each other, you get a good feeling just by the simple act of helping. So we know it's a natural way of doing things, a good thing, the sense of connection that it creates. And we've seen compassion take hold in other ways as well. The University of Louisville Medical School now, the physician to the Dalai Lama comes every year and welcomes our new medical students and teaches them about compassion and mindfulness and education as part of their curriculum. University of Louisville's Envirome Institute, which studies the relationship between people and its environment, is led by Dr. Aruni Bhatnagar, who's a global leader now in the emerging field of environmental medicine. The Envirome Institute has developed innovative programs like the Green Heart Project, which is a partnership between the Nature Conservancy and University of Louisville and the Center for the Envirome, which is helping to prove that vegetative medicine or environmental medicine can increase the health of human beings as we crowdsource data that demonstrates that. I learned an example just last week that I got a big kick out of. The River City Paddle Sports organizes Mindful Mondays, where they have a weekly rowing trip where they get out on the Ohio River, they go up Beargrass Creek, you saw that as one of your legacy projects, and then they paddle back in mindful silence. How about that? And one of the most exciting innovations has been the Compassionate Schools Project. When you think about the challenges that kids in all of our cities have, we have kids growing up in traumatic environments in every city in America. They show up at kindergarten on day one at the age of 6, 3 years behind our most advantaged kids. How would you feel if you were that mom or that dad, holding your hand of your child, walking them to school, knowing that your kid's 3 years behind? So the Compassionate Schools Project is a first-of-its-kind curriculum teaching mindfulness and compassion in elementary schools, to help kids, especially those dealing with trauma, who struggle with both self-love and self-control, and it helps accelerate brain development. Let's take a look at a short video about the Compassionate Schools Project.
At first, I didn't really know what to expect because it's never been something that I've experienced before. Like, I've never had like a class devoted to how to be mindful. It's different because there's not like chairs and desks everywhere.
It is absolutely like nothing else anyone has ever seen before, but it's a wonderful change. We have students who aren't necessarily ready to come to school and aren't in great positions to learn. What Compassionate Schools is doing is it's helping students learn those appropriate coping strategies. How do we solve problems? What is this emotion that I'm feeling right now?
Everybody sit up nice and tall. Before it was just calm down. We'd simply say calm down. Now we're teaching them strategies that they can actually use and benefit from throughout life. This has been kind of the missing piece.
What I like about the Compassionate School Project is that what problems I have at home, I can release them during CSP. Usually when I come in here, something has happened during the day and it just helps me calm down. Having a younger brother and sister, having to take tests. Sometimes when my cousin's over, he drives me nuts a little, and he woke me up this morning and drove me nuts. And I like coming in here because it's very easy to take the stuff that you had in the morning or in your life away.
What I've noticed is students really are fascinated with that idea of compassion for other people, and I think it seems like something they've almost been craving.
Mindful means that you take your thoughts, your inner feelings, and you use them in your benefit to get through your day, to worry about yourself, to deal with frustration. It's a big difference because I have used what Mr. Wedding has taught me. I take it to classes and at home, teaching my parents what I've learned in CSP.
I think that we want our world to be a more peaceful place, and we want our citizens to be more thoughtful and more mindful about the decisions that they make when they're interacting with one another.
The Compassionate Schools Project has been featured in many publications, Time Magazine most recently. The research covers 50 schools and 20,000 children here in Louisville. We're tracking this over 7 years. So what we're hoping to prove is this breakthrough curriculum is able to advance a child's cognitive ability, their social interactions, so that they can learn better and that they can be prepared for a more successful life. Compassion has other applications. It helps helps guide our decisions about economic development, because there's no question we have to change the status quo in some of our neighborhoods, not just here in our city, but all over the country. We have made a deliberate effort and results in our 8 years in office to invest in underinvested areas of our city. Over $1 billion has been invested in the 9 neighborhoods of West Louisville. They have struggled because of historic disinvestment. And many of the people that live in these neighborhoods struggle because they were denied the opportunity to create and pass on generational wealth because of racist practices and policies like redlining and urban renewal. Part of being a compassionate city means acknowledging that our city government and others have not always been interested in compassion, and in fact, once worked to prevent some citizens from realizing their full human potential. Muhammad Ali, then Cassius Clay, grew up in West Louisville, 3302 Grand Avenue. He was a product of that era. Even after he came home from the Olympics with a gold medal in boxing, he was still denied the respect everyone deserved in the segregated South. Here's an interview he did with the BBC in 1971. He's talking about when he was on the medal stand at the 1960 Olympics in Rome.
Won the Olympic gold medal in Rome, Italy. Olympic champion, the Russian standing right here, and the Pole right here. Is Poland considered a communist country? Yeah. Yeah, I'm defeating America's so-called threats or enemies. And the flag is going ton 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 ton. I'm standing so proud. Ton 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 ton. And I don't whoop the world for America. Ton 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 ton. I took my gold medal, thought I'd invented something. I said, man, I know I'm going to get my people freedom there. I'm the champion of the whole world, Olympic champion. I know I can eat downtown now. And I went downtown that day, had my big old medal on, and went in the restaurants. At that time, black things weren't integrated. The black folks couldn't eat downtown. And I went downtown, I sat down, and I said, a cup of coffee, hot dog. The lady said, we don't serve Negroes. I was so mad. I said, I don't eat them either. Just give me a couple of hamburgers. I said, I'm the Olympic gold medal. 3 days ago, I fought for this country in Rome. I won the gold medal, and I'm going to eat. The manager, I heard her tell the manager, and he said, well, I'm not the man. Now he's got to go out. Anyway, I didn't raise no hell. They put me out. And I had to leave that restaurant in my hometown where I went to church and served in their Christianity and fought, and daddy fought in all the wars. Just won the gold medal and couldn't eat downtown. I said, something's wrong. And from then on, I've been a Muslim.
So in that story, Muhammad obviously takes a painful moment and uses humor to make it a story that enlightens people. As a Louisvillian, I can tell you it's hard to hear that story, but I believe we have to own our own history, all of it, the proud moments and the painful, in order to move forward as a city. And we have to all move forward together. That's what a compassionate city does. And that can be a challenge, particularly today, when we witness the attempts by some to make this a time of great division in our country. We must reject all attempts at hate and all attempts to divide us. I believe, and I witness, there is a yearning throughout America for cities that run counter to this painful national narrative that we're having to endure. America is looking for cities that are innovative, entrepreneurial, equitable, and compassionate. Cities that can come together and embrace the universal value of compassion that makes it possible. The Dalai Lama is the Buddha of compassion. I like to call him a strategic partner of our city and our compassion efforts. He finds it interesting that a city is trying to be a compassionate city. And he puts it really simply. To be happy, practice compassion. To make others happy, be compassionate. It's not that difficult. Yes, Ali's story gives us proof, but we all have our own stories as well. I'd like to show you one more video. Lonnie talked about the experience of Ali Week 2016, when the champ came home for his final rest. My office is producing a documentary about that week because we feel like, just as Ali was a unique figure in human history, that week was unique as well. 1 billion people watched on TV. 100,000 people lined our streets for his procession. And the worldwide audience who watched his memorial service on TV and online was really innumerable. Here are some of the highlights.
What our kids can do if we help them realize their whole human potential.
tell you a story about a man. His name is Muhammad Ali. He is the greatest of all time. He is from Louisville, Kentucky, and he lives in each and every one of us. And his story is far from over. Thank you.
So that is a legacy to build on. That shows us what compassion looks like, and it shows us what compassion can do in our cities. And while there can only be one Muhammad Ali, his journey from Grand Avenue to global icon serves as a reminder that there are young people with the potential for greatness in houses and neighborhoods all over each and every one of our cities. There is no limit to what our kids and our neighbors can do if we help them realize their full human potential. And there is no excuse for us to do anything less than our best to help them find that greatness in themselves. That is how we can all become champions. Thank you for coming to our city.
Thank you so much, Mayor Fischer, for those, and to Lonnie, for those wonderful words of welcome, compassion, and inspiration that I'm sure are going to influence how we see and feel everything this week. So who's this up here? My name is Michael Pride. And for the past year, it's been my honor and pleasure to serve as your National Board Chair since we last saw each other in Savannah. I am especially delighted and tickled to be here with you all in Louisville as I started my academic career here in Kentucky and working at the University of Kentucky, and had the pleasure of meeting and working with many of you way back then. And it's wonderful to see how much this place has changed, evolved, and lifted since I was last here. So there's a kind of a happy symmetry or synergy in being able to close out my year as board chair here in Louisville at CNU 27, wow, 27. My fours look like sevens. In what I consider to be my old backyard. Tonight, though, I am specifically here to invite you to join us in our second annual board listening session. We started this last year in Savannah, and that conversation contributed really significantly to our ongoing discussions about bringing diversity, equity, and inclusion into our work, into the places that we create, and into our interactions with each other. This year's board listening session will continue that discussion as well. And that's tomorrow at 12:30. Yep, grab a lunch quickly after a session, and please join us in the Medallion A room at the Sailbach Hotel. In the meantime, the bar is open again, at least until 8 p.m. So mix it up, talk about what you've heard this evening and what you're going to talk about, see, learn about all this week. Thank you so much.